Imagine this. It's the roaring 1920s. The streets of New York are alive with the rhythm of jazz, and flapper dresses sway under glittering lights. The mood? Optimistic. The economy? Booming. And the stock market? Oh, it's climbing to heights no one thought possible. People are pouring their savings into the stock market, not just the wealthy elite, but everyday folks, teachers, shopkeepers, even farmers. Why not? Everyone believes they're on the brink of unimaginable wealth. And there's a magic trick they're using called buying on margin. Here's how it worked. Imagine you have $1,000. Instead of buying $1,000 worth of stock, you put that down as a deposit and borrow $9,000 more. Now you've got $10,000 worth of stock. If the stock goes up, you're a genius, richer than your wildest dreams. But what happens if the stock goes down? That's where our story turns dark. The bubble grows. As the 1920s roll on, the market keeps climbing. People are getting rich, at least on paper. Stocks are doubling, tripling in value. Newspapers call it the miracle of modern finance. Dinner parties buzz with talk of easy money. Bankers, shoeshiners, and even taxi drivers are giving stock tips. But behind the glitz and glamour, cracks are forming. Companies, though stock prices are shooting up, but their actual profits aren't growing at the same pace. It's a bubble, fragile and inflated with greed. Then comes the summer of 1929. Some investors start to worry. They look at the sky-high prices and ask, can this really last? They start selling, quietly at first. But fear, much like greed, is contagious. The panic begins Black Thursday, October 24th, 1929, a day that would be etched in history as Black Thursday. The stock market opens and the sell-off begins. Prices tumble. The frenzy grows. Phones ring off the hook at brokerage firms. Traders shout over one another, desperate to offload stocks before they fall even further. The floor of the New York Stock Exchange is pure chaos. Some brokers are pale, others sweating profusely. By the end of the day, $3 billion in wealth evaporates. Gone. Just like that, a group of major bankers huddle in a back room. They decide to step in, buying massive amounts of stock to stabilize the market. And for a brief moment, it works. The panic subsides. But it's only the eye of the storm. Black Monday and Black Tuesday. The collapse. Fast forward a few days to October 28, Black Monday. The bankers' efforts weren't enough. Panic resurges, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average plunges nearly 13% in one day. And then comes October 29, Black Tuesday. If you thought things couldn't get worse, think again. It's a bloodbath on Wall Street. Stocks are sold at any price. Fortunes built over years vanish in hours. Some stocks lose 90% of their value. The numbers are staggering, but it's the human stories that stick with you. Men and women who had been millionaires a week ago are now penniless. Some can't bear the shame and tragedy. Stories of brokers jumping from skyscrapers become part of the lore. By the end of the month, the market has lost 40% of its value. The bubble has burst, and the fallout has only begun. The ripple effect, the Great Depression. The crash isn't just a Wall Street problem. It seeps into every corner of America. Banks that lent money to investors can't recover their loans. They start to collapse. When banks fail, people lose their savings. Businesses can't get loans, so they shut their doors. Factories go silent. Farms are foreclosed. Lines for bread and soup grow longer by the day. Families lose their homes, their dignity, their hope. And it's not just the U.S. The effects ripple across the globe. Countries dependent on American trade feel the pinch. Global markets slow, and economies everywhere enter a spiral of despair. The stock market crash of 1929 wasn't just a moment in history. It was a turning point. It showed us how fragile our systems can be and how quickly greed can turn to fear. So as we reflect on this story, let's ask ourselves, are we making the same mistakes today? Are we chasing wealth without considering the risks? The lesson? When something seems too good to be true, it usually is. The aftermath. The economic consequences of the crash were catastrophic. Banks failed, as they could not recover the loans they had made to investors who now couldn't pay them back. Businesses shuttered their doors, unable to cope with the financial fallout. Unemployment skyrocketed as the economy ground to a halt. People who had once enjoyed prosperity were now facing widespread poverty and uncertainty. The Great Depression was in full swing. But the ripple effect didn't stop at the borders of the United States. The crash spread globally, as many countries were connected through trade and finance. The depression that followed was not just an American problem, it became a worldwide crisis. Countries that relied on trade with the U.S. saw their economies collapse as well, leading to even more suffering. In the wake of the disaster, the U.S. government took action. Recognizing that the financial system needed regulation to prevent such a crisis from happening again, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, was created. This regulatory body would oversee the stock market and ensure that the kinds of speculative practices that led to the crash would not be repeated. The lessons learned. The stock market crash of 1929 was a wake-up call. It exposed the dangers of unchecked speculation, the fragility of a financial system built on bubbles, and the deep inequalities that can lie beneath periods of apparent prosperity. Most importantly, it showed the world the necessity of financial regulation to prevent future catastrophes. The crash left a deep scar on the American economy, but it also provided valuable lessons about the importance of caution, fairness, and oversight in the world of finance. It stands as a powerful reminder of how unchecked optimism and inequality can lead to devastating consequences. The Great Crash of 1929 may have marked the beginning of the Great Depression, but it also marked a turning point in how we think about the stock market and the economy as a whole. Rebuilding and recovery. In the aftermath of the crash, the road to recovery was long and difficult. The U.S. economy did not recover overnight, and for many, the effects of the Great Depression lingered throughout the 1930s. Unemployment remained high, and poverty was widespread. However, the lessons learned from the crash would eventually lead to significant changes in how the economy was managed. One of the most important steps toward recovery was the introduction of New Deal programs by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who took office in 1933. The New Deal aimed to address the immediate needs of the American people, reform the financial system, and restore confidence in the economy. Among the most notable reforms were: 1. Banking reforms. To prevent further bank failures, the government introduced measures such as the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, which insured bank deposits to restore trust in the banking system. This was a critical step in stabilizing the financial sector and ensuring that people's savings were protected. But 2. Stock market regulation. The establishment of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, in 1934 provided a regulatory framework for the stock market. The SEC's role was to enforce laws against fraud and manipulation, ensuring transparency and fairness in stock trading. These reforms helped curb the kind of speculative behavior that had contributed to the crash. 3. Social safety nets. Roosevelt's administration also implemented programs to provide relief for the unemployed and support for the most vulnerable in society. This included the creation of the Social Security Act in 1935, which established a social safety net for the elderly, disabled, and unemployed. 4. Public works projects. The government launched a series of public works programs to create jobs and stimulate economic activity. This included the construction of roads, bridges, and schools, which not only improved the nation's infrastructure, but also provided work for millions of Americans. Global impact and lessons. The consequences of the Great Depression and the stock market crash of 1929 were not confined to the United States. Many other nations experienced severe economic downturns, and global trade plummeted. The interconnectedness of the world economy meant that no country was immune to the fallout. The crash set off a series of economic crises in Europe, Latin America, and Asia, contributing to a global depression that lasted for years. One of the most significant global repercussions was the rise of extreme political ideologies in several countries. In Germany, for example, the economic turmoil contributed to the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, leading to the outbreak of World War II. In other nations, the crash led to the strengthening of socialist movements and a call for government intervention in the economy. Cautionary tale. The stock market crash of 1929 remains a cautionary tale, emphasizing the dangers of unchecked speculation, economic inequality, and a lack of oversight. It highlighted the importance of balance in financial markets, where regulation, fairness, and transparency are essential for stability. The events leading to the crash also demonstrated how deeply interconnected the global economy had become, showing that a crisis in one country could easily spread across borders. In the years that followed, economists, policymakers, and financial experts closely studied the causes of the crash in an effort to prevent future occurrences. The introduction of financial regulations, banking reforms, and social safety nets were important steps toward ensuring the stability of the global financial system and protecting citizens from the harshest effects of economic downturns. The crash also reinforced the idea that prosperity is not always shared equally. The economic boom of the 1920s may have seemed like a period of great success, but for many, it was a time of hardship. The Great Depression that followed forced the world to confront the realities of economic disparity and the importance of building a more inclusive, equitable financial system. As the years went on, the world began to rebuild from the devastation caused by the Great Depression. The lessons learned from the crash and the subsequent reforms helped shape the modern financial system. The creation of government agencies like the SEC, the establishment of social safety nets like Social Security, and the introduction of banking reforms all contributed to a more regulated and stable financial environment. While the stock market crash of 1929 was a devastating event, it ultimately led to lasting changes that reshaped economies, financial systems, and social policies around the world. It serves as a reminder that, while the pursuit of wealth and progress is important, it must be done with caution, responsibility, and foresight. The Great Crash and its aftermath are etched into history as a powerful reminder that unchecked speculation and economic inequality can bring the world to its knees, but that through careful reform, recovery, and international cooperation, a better future can emerge from the wreckage. If you found this story insightful and it got you thinking about the lessons of history, make sure to hit that like button and share this episode with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this chapter in history. Drop a comment below with your reflections or suggestions for future topics. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss out on our deep dives into more fascinating stories from the past. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next episode.